The Blue Jays are about to make a move that could completely change their entire season. Stick around because what's happening right now in Toronto might shock you. The Toronto Blue Jays have been sitting on their hands for most of this offseason, and frankly, fans are getting restless. Everyone's been watching them make pitching moves, bringing in arms to solidify the rotation and beef up that bullpen. That's all well and good, but here's the thing. Pitching doesn't mean much if you can't score runs. And right now, the Blue Jays need offense. They need someone who can change a game with one swing, someone who makes opposing pitchers lose sleep the night before they face Toronto. Enter Kyle Tucker. This guy is the real deal, and if you've been paying attention to baseball over the last few seasons, you already know what he brings to the table. We're talking about a legitimate superstar, an all-around player who can hit for average, hit for power, steal bases, and play elite defense in the outfield. He's exactly the kind of player who can take a good team and push them over the edge into championship territory. Now here's where it gets interesting. Tucker visited Toronto earlier in the offseason. That's not just a casual drop-by. When a free agent of Tucker's caliber takes the time to fly to another city and tour the facilities, check out the spring training complex in Dunedin, and sit down with the front office, it means something. It means there's genuine interest on both sides. The Blue Jays have been pegged as frontrunners for Tucker, and honestly, that makes perfect sense when you think about it. But let's talk about what everyone expected versus what's actually happening. Coming into this offseason, people were throwing around numbers like $400 million for Tucker. Some analysts had him getting one of those massive mega deals that would set him up for life. Juan Soto just got his massive contract, and Tucker's camp probably looked at that and thought they were next in line for generational wealth. But the market doesn't always work the way you think it will. Here we are, into January, and Tucker still hasn't signed. That's wild when you really think about it. The best position player available in free agency, a guy who should have teams in a bidding war, and he's still sitting there unsigned. What's going on? Well, according to some recent reports, Tucker's team is now open to something completely different. We're talking about a short-term deal, something that would let him hit free agency again in a year or two when the market might be more favorable. Braden Hina from Clutch Points made a prediction that's getting a lot of attention. He thinks Tucker signs with Toronto on a 2-year, $86 million contract with a player option after the first year. Think about that for a second. That's $43 million per year, which is absolutely elite money, but the length is way shorter than anyone anticipated. For Tucker, this would be a chance to maximize his earnings right now, bet on himself staying healthy and productive, and then cash in again when he's still in his prime. John Heyman reported that Tucker's camp is legitimately considering these shorter deals now. That changes everything. If Tucker is willing to do a 1 or 2 year deal with a massive annual value, suddenly way more teams can get involved. The Dodgers could jump in. Other big market teams that were scared off by the long-term commitment could suddenly become players. But Toronto has a real advantage here because they've already done the groundwork. They've already hosted Tucker, shown him what they're building, and made their pitch. For the Blue Jays, this would be the move that defines their offseason. They've already spent big on Dylan Cease, locking up their rotation with a $210 million deal. That showed they're serious about winning now. But adding Tucker? That's a statement. That's telling the rest of the American League East that Toronto isn't just trying to compete, they're trying to dominate. Let's think about what Tucker would mean for this lineup. You've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the middle of the order. You've potentially got Bo Bichette if they bring him back. You add Tucker to that mix, and suddenly pitchers have nowhere to hide. You can't pitch around one guy because the next guy is just as dangerous. That's how you build an offense that can hang with anybody in October. John Schneider, the Blue Jays manager, was pretty clear about what the team needs when he spoke at the winter meetings back in December. He said adding a bat was a priority. He acknowledged that the offense was good last year, that they scored runs and did it even when key guys were injured. But good isn't good enough in this division. You've got the Yankees, the Orioles, the Rays, and the Red Sox all trying to improve. If Toronto wants to win the AL East, they need to be great. They need difference makers. The Blue Jays have been linked to several big names. They're talking to Bichette about an extension. Alex Bregman's name has come up in rumors. But Tucker is the crown jewel. He's younger than Bregman, he's more proven than some of the other options out there, and he fits exactly what Toronto needs. A left-handed bat with power who can play premium defense and contribute on the bases. You don't find that combination very often. What makes this whole situation so fascinating is the timing. Tucker coming off what some people are calling a disappointing season, even though his numbers were still excellent, might be exactly what makes this deal work for Toronto. If he was coming off a career year, maybe he's completely out of their price range. But with the market moving slower than expected, with his camp now open to creative deal structures, Toronto has a real window here. Think about Tucker playing his home games in that ballpark, with those dimensions, in that division. He'd see Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, Camden Yards regularly. Those are hitter-friendly environments. His numbers could explode playing in the AL East. And if he does that on a short-term deal, guess what? He still gets his massive payday down the road, maybe even bigger than what he would have gotten this winter. The proximity to Tampa matters too. Tucker's from that area, and Dunedin is right there. That's where the Blue Jays have their spring training facility, and it's gorgeous. For a guy who values being close to home, especially during spring training when you're spending 6 weeks away from family, that matters. It's not the deciding factor, but it's another piece that fits. So what happens next? If Tucker signs this short-term deal with Toronto, the entire landscape of the American League shifts. The Blue Jays go from being a team that might compete to being a legitimate World Series threat. Their lineup becomes one of the most dangerous in baseball. Their window, which is already open with Guerrero and Bichette, gets maximized. Everything changes with one signature. This is the kind of move that fans will remember for years. If it works out, if Tucker produces the way everyone knows he can, and if Toronto makes a deep playoff run, this becomes the signing that changed everything. And if Tucker hits free agency again in a year or two,